Rodriguez, not yet formerly of UCLA, unlike the other moderators today. I don't know if you noticed, so we're hoping that you'll stick around at UCLA. He's professor and vice chair of family medicine in UCLA's David Geffen School of Medicine, director of the Bloom Center on Poverty and Health in Latin America, and co-director of the Center of Expertise on Migration and Health. His research focuses on health equity, ethnic racial health disparities, migration, and violence prevention. So join me in welcoming Dr. Rodriguez.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation to come and present to you all. This has been an exciting and significant, important day to talk about issues that aren't given as much light as they need to have, and in a context that shares community with advocacy, with scholarship, and so it's a pleasure to be here and also to be representing my Salvadoreño side, because my father was Salvadoreño. And so I'm happy and proud to be part Salvadoreño as well as part Mexican. So I also want to say that we have a special guest on this panel that's not listed. And so we are very, very fortunate that we'll have somebody who'll be able to share her story as somebody who has been in detention. And it's extremely difficult, and for anybody to share experiences that have been very traumatic, very difficult, and so and also for someone who still is undergoing experiences. And so because of that reason, I'll ask, and we'll repeat it again, that when she comes to speak, that nobody bring up their cameras, that nobody tweet, that we will have the camera that's up here off, so that we can respect her and support her. So without further ado, we're also extremely fortunate, and we've got one of the foremost people who are providing not only scholarly leadership, but also community advocacy and on a local and national level. Dr. Lacey Abrego is the first person who I am privileged to introduce. She's an associate professor in Chicana and Chicano studies at UCLA. She has a focus on the lived experiences of Central Americans and other Latinos. Her work examines their well-being as shaped by U.S. immigration laws. She is an amazing scholar. She's published a book that's entitled Sacrificing Families, Navigating Laws, Labor, and Love Across Borders, and which exposes the economic and emotional consequences of long-term separation for Salvadoran immigrants and their families. She does enormous work, and I could go on, but I think I'd rather focus on hearing from her as well as going on and hearing from the other panelists. So please join me in giving Lacey, Dr. Abrego, a warm welcome.
Thank you all for being here. I don't want to take up a lot of time because this is, to me, one of the more important parts of today's event. And as I think Chon mentioned earlier, right, my goal has always been to humanize, seeing the way that my people have been portrayed in all kinds of different spaces, and given what's been going on, I, as one of just a handful of Central American PhDs in the US, feel a lot of responsibility and commitment to making sure that I use my platform to shed light on what's going on. And so it puts me in this position, things that I didn't ever really think about as I was, making my way in academia, it puts me in this position where I'm one of the few recognizable people that everyone thinks to come to, especially in a city like LA, because there's so much going on here, right? And so it's a very, very privileged position to be in. It's a lot of responsibility, and I try to do it in a way that really reaches all of the different groups of people that I care deeply about, in terms of just human beings, in terms of advocates, in terms of people making a life here. And so there's lots of you in this room right now who are doing all of this kind of work, and my hope is that this space is a space to connect and to talk to each other and to kind of heal a little bit, because we haven't talked a lot about the healing end of things, and I see it. I also do expert witness work, and I can tell you, this week I was down for a few days after writing declarations for 4 people who have gone through things that no one should have to ever go through. And so I feel it at that end. I feel it at the end of knowing these communities, being a part of these communities. I know it when I talk to social workers who are trying to figure out how to help the kids that are arriving in LA. I hear it from the activists who are trying to help just recently released mothers and their children find work and a place to live. And there's just so many ends of this that are traumatic for so many of us who are trying to do something when we're being made invisible or completely criminalized at the same time. And so to me, it's super important to keep all of that here. If you noticed, even a few of the speakers talked about how they cry often. I've asked social workers, how do you handle this, after they've told me about hundreds of cases that they've been working on, and they'll honestly say, I will need a day off every once in a while and eat donuts all day, because you just don't know where to put that energy, and it's important to recognize it, I think, not to overlook that reality. So I'm putting it here in front of us because it's also what is part of the work that people do in our community right now, working with youth, trying to put together a resource guide that you'll see about, trying to figure out how to get the message out, how to get this information out in ways that don't further caricaturize us, right? That it's not just about further criminalizing young people, that we don't forget that women are also at the center of this as victims, but as advocates for themselves, that we don't forget that there's real complex human beings at the center of all of it, and that no one group is going to come in and save them, and that we all have to work together from all these different angles. And so with that, I want to open up the space for this panel and ask that we all really engage the humanity at the center of all of this. Fight off everything that we're told about who these people are and what they need and what we think they need and all of that, and really just be open to the humanity of it, so that we can have real discussions and move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lacey. I appreciate your powerful comments and all your work. I think we are very lucky because we have champions here, champions that I am very privileged to know and to work with. And one of the ones I met a few years ago when we were talking at UCLA about projects that we could do, and in the course of thinking about the different projects that we could do, we were interested in working with the community that people don't talk to very much, and that's the people who are the immigrants, largely folks who are invisible, but visible to many people. Some of these are the day laborers the day laborers who are there on corners. So they're invisible, but they're not invisible. And they are under much pressure and they face many risks because of the nature of their work. Another population that is primarily women are the household workers. The household workers, many of whom take buses to this community from central LA and many other places to take care of homes and families and babies, and also are those who are many times in environments that may impact their health in adverse ways. And so when we were talking about doing projects, learning about the health needs, we worked with IDEPSCA that works to address and advocate for the rights of day laborers, household workers, and others in similar situations. And I worked with the health group, and I met the next person who's going to come and speak. Her name is Nancy Sunica, who is not only a graduate of UCLA, but also Charles Drew University. She's works for IDEPSCA, has been working for IDEPSCA, but she's also a member of the Human Rights Alliance for Child Refugees and Families. Nancy is one of the champions that I'm proud to call a colleague and a friend. Please help me welcome Nancy.
A little shorter than that. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Thank you for that presentation. My name is Nancy Zuniga, and yes, I do also work at IDEPSCA, but I'm here today representing the Human Rights Alliance for Child Refugees and Families, a collective of people concerned, of people that feel this close to their heart, not just because of the humanity of it, right, which is a lot of it, because a lot of us are Central American. We see that this is connected to our histories, to who we are as a people, to violence that has been brought onto our communities for many years. And so that's why we brought together this collective, this group of people that are scholars, people that are organizers, and people that are concerned. We came together as a group, as a small collective here in Los Angeles, when we heard of this so-called crisis last year, over a year now, with the quote-unquote unaccompanied minors, right? We came together, a friend, a great organizer that's now in Texas, brought us all together, called us all up. Many Central American and allies, organizers here working in LA, brought us together and said, we need to do something. This is our community. This is our issue. And again, it's on our legacy also to fight back, right? And to contextualize also what's going on, right? That is to, as Dr. Abrego was talking, right? Of contextualizing and bringing the humanity of this issue, right? That it's not a new issue as well. It's something that has been happening, right? But has been politicized continuously in a certain way to create a certain narrative about who we are as a group of people. And so I just want to share a little bit about what we've been doing and why we've been doing it, because that's really at the essence of who we are. We are a collective. We are not a nonprofit. We are a collective that has been supporting and uplifting the voices of the women in detention, of the families in detention. So a lot has been heard about unaccompanied minors and what that has looked like. But there has been a different process happening for families in detention, for women and their children being detained at the border. And detained is a real understatement, right? They've been incarcerated in prisons, in immigration prisons, where they have been deprived of their freedom. That's what's really been happening. And as we began to organize last year around the issue of children, we started also meeting families, meeting mothers that were being detained and their families here in different cities across the US, not knowing what to do. And so we came together and have been accompanying, supporting, helping uplift the voices of those mothers and those children detained. And so just a little bit about what we've learned in this last year or so of organizing, of supporting, of really trying to uplift those voices and that struggle. Again, like I was mentioning, it's been a different process for women and children in detention. Basically, I'm not sure how much has already been contextualized, but I think a little bit has. But really what we want to emphasize, right, is how much of a gendered issue this is, right? That it's not just children, right, but women that are fleeing Central America and their distinct countries and distinct realities, but a lot of gendered realities, right? There's a lot of femicide, there's a lot of domestic violence, there is also a lot of gang violence that is very directed towards women, right? So when we see the issue of family detention, we see that women are fleeing gendered violence, and then they come to a situation here in the US of more gendered violence. And so we really want to highlight that because it's an important part also of their own advocacy, right? As women coming together while in detention and fighting back. And so that's also another element of the work that we've been doing, is supporting those women in their own struggle and helping the world hear it as well. Just a little context of things that we've learned of women while in detention. And I'm not going to speak for too long because, as Dr. Rodriguez mentioned, someone will be speaking and sharing what that experience is like, but more importantly, why they fight back. Because that's really what we're about, given that this is our community and we believe that we have our own agency as well, that we are not just victims in this whole situation, but we come from a legacy of fighting back as well. And so just a little bit about what detention, a group of us went, visited one of the detention centers in Texas, in Carnes. It's called the Carnes Family Residential Center, which again is a big farce because that's not what it is. It's really it's a prison, really, an immigration prison where people are being deprived of their freedom, women and children specifically. And so from the stories that we've heard, there's a lot of issues around, just trauma in general, right, of being deprived of your freedom. There was a lot of situations with the type of food that they were receiving. A lot of children didn't want to eat because the food wasn't good, right? And so there's a whole traumatic experience around being incarcerated. Some of the women that we had been in communication with and organizing with, they were detained for over almost a year, some a little more than a year. And so when the media comes out that people are just getting released, that isn't true. That's not the full story. A lot of the women that we had been organizing with were detained for that long of a time with the excuse that they had a previous deportation. And this is really important to highlight, right? Just the criminalization of women and their children, and then using that as an excuse to continue this criminalization of these families. So from what we know, there was a lack of appetite, loss of hair of the children, of the mothers. There was attempts of suicide within that got a lot more media attention towards the last couple of months, but this has been going on since last year. So there's a lot of things that have happened. What we have been doing as the Alliance is really trying to stay close to the families. As many of you might imagine, what these detention centers have done is really separated, even physically, right, geographically, these families from where their families here in the US are. So the center that we visited was in Texas, Carnes, very far from the city, very far from where a lot of the families of these women are at. A lot of these women actually have their families in LA and a lot of cities where a lot of Salvadoran Central Americans are at. And so for us, it's been really important to even provide that emotional support, right? Because it's not just the legal part of things, right? There's also the human aspect of being incarcerated and what that means. And so that's one of the things we've been doing. We visited the families. I don't remember if I mentioned or not, but our organizers, our members are here in LA and in Texas. And so in Texas, there's 2 large family detention centers where our organizers have been visiting and supporting the mothers and their children. Other things that we've been doing really is trying to get out the demands of these mothers and their children. And for that part, I really want to bring up one of the persons that can really speak more on that, because again, we believe that it's our role to support our own community in uplifting their struggle, our struggle, from their own voices. And so I just want to give a little context. They have done hunger strikes, they have written letters. Our role has been really to share that with the world, right, through social media, through letters to Congress. That's really been our focus, right, but really emphasizing on the voices of the families impacted. So I'm going to ask, please, that out of respect for our presenter, organizer, and very strong mujer, that we please turn off all media and respect, because she cannot be recorded or taken photos. So please ask if we could do that now. Just to again reiterate, right, she said it herself, right, the different circumstances in which they organized, right, they fought back. And that's really what we want to also include in the narrative, that even though legal services, direct services of all kinds are needed, we also need to organize. That is really to fight back, not just detention, right? That's one of the ways in which our community is being attacked, but more importantly, changing policies that are allowing for this to happen in the first place. Not just here, but also in Central America, in the region, that are pushing our communities out of their countries. And so that's really our emphasis as an alliance, not just uplifting, of course, the voices of the families impacted, but also getting at the root causes for forced migration. I just want to leave you with our website in case you're interested in learning more about the work that we're doing. Again, we're a small collective, but we are asking that folks support. We do want to help the families that we stay connected with that have been released now. A lot of them need more support with legal services. They need health services. A lot of them come out and their families are dealing with a lot of poverty themselves, a lot of challenges themselves. So we ask that if you're interested in supporting on that level as well, you reach out to us. And so our website is www.refugeerightsnow.com. Very simple. You can find there when we're doing actions here and in Texas and in other cities where we have allies. And I just want to mention, just that, and then you can find us on Facebook and on other social media as well. Thank you. She's not going to answer in person, but I can hold
Thank you very much y muchísimas gracias por compartir con nosotros su historia. Es muy importante nosotros que estamos aquí, no solamente hablar sobre las situaciones difíciles, injustos, pero también trabajar con los que están afectados y aprender de los que están afectados y de los niños, y con esa información intentar a cambiar, porque por eso estamos aquí, no solamente para hablar, pero realmente para informar la situación y para poder actuar de una manera en apoyo y en solidaridad. So we're here to support each other. One of the aspects that I think that also distinguishes this convening is that it's not a bunch of academics talking about esoteric things. It's not just academics and advocates talking about esoteric things. or non-esoteric things, but it's actually advocates, academics, researchers, teachers, community, and members of those communities that we are most concerned about in terms of experiencing in unjust situations. The next speaker that I'm going to invite up to the podium, or he can speak where he wants, is an internationally recognized peacemaker. His name is Alex Sanchez. When I first saw that Alex had co-founded Homies Unidos in Los Angeles, I was actually quite humbled to meet such a distinguished and important person. A few years ago, I went with Dr. Father Greg Boyle to El Salvador to meet with a group that was also called Homies Unidos in El Salvador, and to address the issue of violence several years ago, which unfortunately continues today. And as Nancy pointed out, and as our speakers pointed out, issues of violence are very much a part of the lives of the people who we're talking about. It's a part of the narrative, it's a part of the reality. And one of the wonderful things is that we have organizations, efforts, individuals who are actually taking action to address the violence in the diverse different forms in which it manifests itself. As Nancy pointed out, there's the gendered violence, the violence against women, intimate partner violence, and there's also violence that's youth directed. It can be male, it can be female, but it's also violence, intentional injuries that are happening, but also a different narrative and interconnected to the other forms of violence as well. So our next speaker has developed and implemented innovative violence prevention and intervention programs since 1998. He's led the organization as executive director since 2006, an outstanding community leader. Sanchez's commitment to disenfranchised youth and their families in the Latino and largely Central American communities at the Pico, Union, Westlake, and Koreatown areas of LA is rooted in his own personal journey that includes also having been involved in gangs and a target of the U.S. INS. Please join me in welcoming Alex Sanchez.
You know, when I first came to realize that I wanted to live and not die in the streets like another youth in our ghettos, I didn't know where to go. I didn't have a place to go. There was nobody that told me you could walk this way. I could show you how to walk out of the neighborhood, of the gang, of the violence, the drugs. There wasn't any. Most people wanted to convert me to Christianity, Catholicism, evangelical, and all those things. It didn't resonate with me. But when I decided that I wanted to live, it was because I had experienced a life of tragedies that now they consider me that I'm living as a chronic, that I was diagnosed with chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, right? But when I was deported to El Salvador in 1994, for the first time I felt that I wanted to have a fresh start, to go to a country where I was not gonna have a criminal record, a country that I at least had some advantages. I spoke English, I had some education, I wasn't illiterate, You know, I felt that I could get a good job maybe in the tourist industry or something. I had tattoos. And when I got down there, the reality really hit that as soon as I landed in the airport, there was nobody waiting for me. My father didn't even tell my auntie that I was arriving. I only had an address and nowhere the know-how gotta get there. I asked somebody that was next door, that was sitting on the plane just before, he told me, look, just come with me, we'll go to the terminal, and then you act like you know where you're going. You get a taxi, you give 100 colones back then, when colones still ruled our country, you know, and you act like you know where you're going. Because that guy might take you somewhere else and rip you off. If he knows you're coming from the US, he probably thinks you have money. And that's what I did. And I was used to acting tough, right? I had tattoos, I was overweight like I am right now. You know? I was coming out of prison after doing some time, and you know, so I was stocky, and I look a little threatening, right? So I made the mean face, right? Take me to this address in Spanish. And then this guy drove me, and you know, we're arriving at this place. And before he stopped, I recognized the area. I left the country when I was 7 years old because of the violence that was happening in the area. I came here with my little brother who was 5 years old. I was 7, as unaccompanied minors. We came with people that we didn't know. They took us to places that scared us in order to bring us here. And then they transferred us from one place to another place until we crossed the border. I don't remember which one. But the truth was that they told us, if you don't say that we're your parents, you're never gonna see your parents again. So we had this fear. I remember clearly, we peed in our pants along the way. We went through so much traumatic moments, you know, fear as children. And when this officer opened the door of the van we were in, and he asked the words, "Who's your parents?" we just pointed at those people that we didn't know. After they crossed us, and you know, that was my first image of an Anglo. It was an officer, a white officer in a uniform, and the threat was that he could take me away from my family, take me away from wherever I was going, right? So we went to Skid Row, where the transaction took place. They got us out of a van. Our parents were in a pickup truck, and the exchange was made, and then we walked with these two people. We got in the pickup truck in the front seat, my brother and I holding hands, looking at these two people saying, who the hell are these people? They were our biological parents. But they had been over 5 years. We didn't have pictures of them. We didn't know them. They were a complete stranger to us. When we got home, we were introduced to a new brother that we didn't know we had, that spoke mostly English, right? And to build up that relationship became very, very difficult with the family. So what do? There's nowhere to go. They put me in school. Was the first thing I do. It's like, nobody speaks Spanish. People darker than me, Latinos, couldn't speak Spanish. They only spoke English. And it became very difficult because all of a sudden jokes were being made and they were looking at you and you didn't know what they were saying and you just got angry. And that anger built up. And after having space to run around, all of a sudden we're in a 1-bedroom apartment packed with 6 people. And the yard was an alley with urine smell, people drinking all night. That became my playground. This is the same story that's happening now. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. My decision to run away from home at 14 years old was because of the physical abuse that started happening at home with these people that I didn't know, that were my parents. So the sentiment against the whole environment that I came to live in, taking me away to people that I call mom and dad, taking me away from a place that I knew, even though at night you could hear if you heard the bullets, you knew that the shortcut to go to school, there was most likely gonna be a body. Sometimes we didn't hear the shots, and we'll find a decapitated body along the railroad track. So we had to take the long road, which was dangerous. But we were comfortable. Or at least we were able to manage that fear because we were in the environment. Once we closed that gate, we were safe. To come over here and have to experience discrimination the way that we did, to have to experience, another language, another culture, to meet Koreans that you never make friends with. Next door, the building was full of Koreans. We never made friends. Just this, and the other thing was that seeing an African American for the first time never crossed my mind of how shocking that could be. Nobody explained to me, what I was gonna face. There was no plan of transition. There was no letting me know, what I was gonna be facing. So when you face this culture shock, the only way you responded is what you know how to do. And I started defending myself in a way in which I did not want to let anybody know who I was or what I was. I started speaking more Mexican because that was more predominant. It was safer, right? But when I got to middle school, the way that I had reacted to the shock was different from the many ways that other youth have reacted to the shock. Because I grew up in Koreatown. These other youth had grown up in Pico Union. And the way that they had reacted to what they had faced was that they had reunited and not lose that identity of who they were, but now they had put a label on themselves and they were calling themselves the MSS-13. They protected themselves from all those oppressive, all those other people, groups and gangs that were fighting, that were trying to pick them on or bullying them. They had gotten together and protected themselves. We were not calling ourselves a gang. I ended up joining them because it was cultural connection. Most of them were Central Americans. That's where I found a way to release that anger. Every time I went and fought, it was letting out all that weight that I had been carrying. All of a sudden, I didn't want to go back. Because this is the Kevin, as soon as I came back, I wanted to go back. I didn't want to be here no more. I wanted to go back. But when I ended up connecting with somebody for the first time, I didn't want to go back. And that life took me into a negative lifestyle, which ended up in juvenile hall, from juvenile hall in prison, and from prison, after 3 times, deported. And I was just thinking about it. Ya me voy a calmar. I'm getting a little bit tired of this. I don't want to be going to prison and having to pull my pants down and have somebody check me, But the reality was that nobody was accepting my redemption. Nobody was accepting that I could change. So in El Salvador, the reality was that they developed a death squad in 1994 called the Black Shadow to eliminate gang members. And that's where we find ourselves now living to in El Salvador. and Guatemala and Honduras. So the work that we do with Homies Unidos is about not only helping those that are already involved, but helping those that could fit and fall through the cracks. And we are passionate about the work that we're doing right now with the unaccompanied minors, because those are the same kids that I was when I was 7. That are coming into the schools, having to face the bullying, or going into homes in which they haven't seen their parents for 10, 15 years. And all of a sudden they gotta call them mom and dad just because you got that biological authority. This is what the youth that they give me in the schools are going through. Not only are they having issues at home, but their issues at home, in school, in the community are manifesting in behavioral issues. All of a sudden, they're mad. They're walking around like they have a chip on their shoulder. They're walking around already trying to identify themselves with something. A school that told me they knew how to deal with the problem because they've dealt with the ESL school kids all their life called me up and told me, Alex, can you tell me what these pictures mean? Can you tell me what this graffiti is? I said, it's a 503. What is that? You guys are in trouble, man. You know, because the 503 is the Salvadorian International Area Code, right? But to a youth, to a group of youngsters, to already start identifying with that symbol, with those numbers, means that they've already chose to stand their ground, create something that will protect them, that will be culturally connected with others of the same ethnic group, to protect themselves from whoever might come their way. I've been working in South Central, in the school where they're telling me about Florencia, they're telling me about 18th Street, they're telling me about this other crews that are in the area, and how they wanted to claim MS-13. And this is the people that they were fleeing from. Why? Because that's what they know. That's the evil they know. So it's critical for us to not make the same mistakes that our community leaders, that our elders did in the 80s. We need to step up and we need to be there for these kids. We cannot let another generation of refugees go through what we went through. That's what become now in Central America. Because we let it happen. Our people let it happen. While we were fighting and they were supporting a war, our kids were getting into trouble they couldn't even identify what it was. And we couldn't have cared less about the war. We didn't understand it. We didn't understand it. All we knew was that my mother abandoned me. Point. It wasn't because you came because you were trying to give me a better life. It wasn't because you were trying to save your life. You abandoned me. And you can't get that out of the kid. I talked to these kids. The story of Jose is in the Opinion this week, 2 days ago. Jose is a young man that had to flee. Not only because, he wanted to, but he needed to save his sister. He wants to go back, but they're not gonna send him back. But he's found a place where he feels that he can make a difference now. He's one of my most outspoken youth. He talked to the rock group Mana yesterday, and then Show that Piolín was standing next to him, talking about how he appreciates now that a lot of Mexican communities have welcomed him after all the places that he's been exposed to. And he's one of our lead organizers for the conference that we're going to be having on Saturday, the first Central American Youth Leadership Conference, specifically directed for unaccompanied minors. And the theme, or the overall goal of it, is to make them feel welcome. We want to welcome these kids and show them that there is a community that's concerned for their safety, that does not want to repeat the same cycle of violence our countries have been in for so long. So that's why I'm here, to let you know that we cannot let this just go by. Just because it's not in the news, it's not popular anymore. Well, these kids are not coming in. They're coming. They're still coming. But you know, Mexico's stopping them a lot. That's why they don't come in such a rush right now. Mexico's really lifted their efforts to stop them. But the reality is that they're here now. They're not in the shelters anymore where we were worried about getting them out. They're not in detention. They're with the parents now. What then? Do we stop providing services because we got them home? That's where it all starts. What then? What do we do then? When we speak with relatives, like a young man that tells me, Alex, you know, man, I love you guys, your group, man, I love you. I don't want to go home. My auntie doesn't want me there. My auntie told me that I just turned 18, that I got to move out by Saturday because I lost my job and I can't pay the rent. An 18-year-old that just turned 18 years old. You know, now he's considered an adult, and no agency wants to help him because they only help from 12 to 17. What do we do with them? They're still a kid. What do we do with him? Should we he's an adult, we shouldn't care anymore? No, we can't. We can't just let those things happen. So I just want to appreciate, you know, having me here today and speaking on this topic. It's really dear to me. That's why I'm almost crying. But let's do something, people. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. You're not the only one who was almost crying. So, yeah, I think I thank you for sharing your story. That is also exemplifies that unfortunately part of what we're talking about is something that has a long history and continues to happen. And I appreciate your call to action. Because that is what we need. We need to make this time different. We need to see how we can come together as a community to make a difference. Like we are here, but not just here, hopefully at the conference as well on Saturday. So, and beyond Saturday.
Yes.
So that's the voice of change and the voice of community and the voice of history. And so to transition, we have also the voice of the future. And you might think, well, who's the future? Well, many of you are all the future. We're all the future, right? But we got people who are younger, okay, younger than me at least, and are out there and are already making a difference. And what I am referring to is the next group of young leaders who are part of the Labor Center Community Scholars Program, which is a fantastic program which they will tell you about, but that helps to bring young people and provide them with an opportunity to make a difference. And if when you registered, hopefully you saw the material that they pulled together. This material, this resource packet, this extremely important information. It's not enough to tell people that they should go somewhere. You need to do it in a way that people can understand. You need to do it in a way that people can understand the language, but also help them to connect the dots so that they can actually utilize resources that do exist. Because there's lots of resources, but there are not enough ways in which to help communities to reach those resources which are important and that are there to help them. So I want to give my new friends a shout out here, and there's 3 of them, and so we're quite fortunate, and I'm going to name them all and introduce them all briefly, and then allow them to speak and share their story with us as well. So we have Jacqueline Munguia, I'm sorry, Victor Interiano, and Mario de Leon. Okay. And Jacqueline is a U.S.-born Salvadoran woman from the city of Bell, whose parents are from San Miguel, El Salvador. She's a member of the UCLA Labor Center Community Scholars Program, a UCLA alumna, and lives in the complicated interstices of grad student and regular human life, pursuing a PhD in literature at UC San Diego with a focus on cultural studies and Central American literature. Right on. Mario de Leon is a project coordinator for the UCLA Labor Center Community Scholars Program. He was born in Guatemala, immigrated to LA at the age of 9. As an undocumented student at UCLA, he advocated for equal access to higher education for immigrant students and served as co-chair of IDEAS at UCLA, one of the largest undocumented student support and advocacy organizations in the country. He's passionate about education, radically changing our current education and immigration systems, and using storytelling as a tool for empowerment. Excellent. And our third scholar is not only a scholar, but an artist. In fact, he is the artist of the resource package that you have. If you don't have it, I encourage you to pick one up so you can share it with others. Also works with the Labor Center and helped to sort of pull it all together. And another leader, Victor Interiano. So please join me in welcoming these 3 leaders.
Hi everyone, my name is Victor. I'm actually going to mention I'm Salvadoran, born in the U.S. So part of the community scholars program was to bring a bunch of urban planning students and Chicano studies students and community members to develop strategies to help a lot of the incoming refugees from Central America who were particularly had this large flow in the latter part of 2014, and so a group of about 50 people kind of started dwindling down over time, but we developed multiple projects that addresses particularly the Pico Union area. So our group, the education group, worked with some folks from LUSD. One of our team members is from LUSD. I also want to give a shout out to one of our team members who's in the audience, Tantillo Ramirez, who's here at UCLA. We love her. And what came out of it was this resource guide, pretty much the first of its kind, because I don't think there really has been a resource guide that is particular to Central Americans.
First off, would like to, before I talk about this, I'd just like to say something in response to something that was said earlier. And I am a short Central American woman, and I am definitely threatening, as we have been historically and today. So really this project came out of community scholars, like Victor was saying, and we were able to work with both students, graduate students, and those of us who aren't currently maybe students but working and doing different things. The community aspect, I guess, of community scholars. And really what we wanted to do is kind of center this project around the youth, around the folks who are being affected by all this displacement and migration. And we couldn't really have done that without a very integral member of our group, which was Cristina Gonzalez, who actually worked directly with the youth and continues to work with the youth today, because she actually allowed us to speak to many of the unaccompanied minors who are now in school, are now going to LAUSD schools, and are really being alienated in school by their peers. Just the same thing that Alex was actually mentioning. We're seeing this happen again and again. And so our intent was, what are some of the needs? What are some of the basic needs? And it's kind of how this came up. We all just sort of projected some ideas on a board. But we didn't want to just ascribe ideas or ascribe what these things were, but wanted to find out if they were true. So we were able to interview some of these youth to really talk to them and hear from them directly what it is that their needs were. So we were able to confirm some of those things with them and include that in our guide. And something that was important to us too is that accessibility. How accessible is this? What's the language? So we just wrote it in Spanish. In English, one does not exist. We are hoping to also translate it into indigenous languages, hopefully in the future, in the near future. And so part of the logic behind the guide is making it colorful, making it something you want to look at. A lot of guides are very just lists and addresses and phone numbers and in English, and it's just a very inaccessible text. So that was something that we prioritized, just drawing birds, drawing trees, symbols that might be familiar to a lot of Central Americans. And something that happened that's interesting with this guide, how it printed actually is not how it looks on our PDF form or the PDF format. There's a lot of black and white, like for example, that the first page, every chapter is actually a different color and it's color coded. And for some reason it printed some things in color and some of it in black and white. So just so you know, it's supposed to be even more colorful than what it looks like. And so yeah, I mean I think that's all I have to say for now.
So we can talk a little bit about the process of how this came together. Community Scholars was a 6-month-long class, so we definitely had a lot of time to learn about the situation in Central America. The first 3 months were really concentrated on the history aspect of it, really understanding the community, and then the second half of it was trying to how do we respond to this information that we're having, right? So we definitely had a lot of conversation within our group about what that could look like. We had a lot of uncomfortable conversations about what that could look like, right? Do we go to LAUSD and talk to them about responding to the youth? Do we go to politicians and talk to them about how to respond, right? And you know, as you can see, that was not what we chose. And I think it was also about really what can we do with the knowledge that we have, what can we do with the skills that we have, and what can we do now? Because we know the urgency and we know that although this is also necessary for us to go to the politicians and to go to the LAUSD, we were trying to take responsibility with what we can, right? And one thing about the conversations that we were having is that we noticed that a lot of us too, as we were sharing, we were really sharing our family story, our family history. And that was really important for us, right? Because we wanted that to be something very personal. It wasn't just something that we were just doing a Google search and then saying, okay, yeah, this law firm was cool, we'll put it in there. Or we'll, oh, this community organization is nearby, it has free services, we'll put it there. It has to be something that it's also like putting our name on it, right? Like we understand that by us sharing these services, sharing these resources, we also are putting a face to this organization. So we did a lot of research about these organizations. We did a lot of, had a lot of conversations about what we would like, what we would have liked our families, and I'll speak of myself too. Like I came at the age of 9 from Guatemala, and there was nothing like this for my family, right? I was very fortunate enough that I was able to, in my first year, be part of a elementary school that closed down actually, but it was for all immigrants, right? So my experience was a little different, but I saw it in my family, my cousins, how they had no one really to talk to and to understand their experience as immigrants. And so what we wanted to share in this resource guide also is that the families that are coming in, the children that are coming in, they aren't just looking for resources like mental health and legal resources, right? They also want to be integrated into the community. And so if you look at the guide too, it's really comprehensive. It's about them learning what are some things that they can do in a weekend, right? When they don't have to worry about going to this immigration hearing, when they don't have to worry about going to this appointment. What are the local resources, like a library? I know for me, growing up, that was a bonding experience with my mom, myself, to go to a library, you know? So we included all of the local libraries there. Also, in previous presentations, we talked about the importance of organizing with communities and the importance of the community themselves taking the initiative, right, to speak for themselves. Yes, that's necessary, but how can we already invite people to know where to go? So we included some organizations, trusted organizations that we have in that community that we are part of, or have friends that are part of it, where youth and families can organize. So a lot of the organizations that we listed there are grassroots, right, that they are really able to become part of that community. So really emphasizing that comprehensive aspect of what it means to be part of that community, and not just victimizing the experience of things.
One thing I'll mention in terms of the development of the art, so there's something I kind of wanted to address that was said at this conference earlier, was about Latinidad, right? One of the reasons for me personally that I felt committed to doing this was to emphasize the distinctiveness of being Central American in LA. That is a very unique experience. Even within the paradigm of being Central American, there is so much diversity between, from Guatemala all the way to Panama. We're talking not just indigenous folks, but African folks, Latinos, So that's one of the things sometimes the problematics that arise in terms of the migrant movement, that out of necessity to create, the necessity and the urgency to create a large-scale movement, that we fall under this umbrella of Latino or Latinidad, which kind of erases the particular distinctiveness of Latin Americans in general, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to have a space that is exclusive so that we can kind of sit together and talk about our issues, or to even have a resource guide that is exclusively just for Central Americans in the Pico Union area. One of the things that came up during the process of developing this is folks asking us if we're going to include the Central American embassies, why aren't we including the Mexican embassy as well, right? The Mexican embassy doesn't provide resources for Central Americans, so we don't understand why it would be in there in the first place, right? It happened more than once. The other thing about Latinidad that I wanted to mention is that it's to be recognizable to the white imaginary. That's really its sole purpose, right? And so we all get lumped together in that. The other thing that I also wanted to mention about the artwork and how colorful it is because in the narrative that comes out about Central Americans, the only thing that's emphasized is the violence, right? Whether it's the violence of gangs or the violence of the civil wars. or the violence of poverty, right? That is the sole narrative by which we are understood, and whiteness particularly emphasizes that, right? So this is actually a contestation of that, because we are more, the violence happens to us, but we are not the violence, right? We are colorful. Where is the emphasis on the resilience? Because as a people, we've been through a lot of shit, excuse my language, but yet we keep going, right? We're happy people. That's never talked about, right? So this is sort of an attempt to emphasize that happiness, particularly with the youth, you know, as we, you know, engage with them. There's this pathologizing that happens with them, right? They come from violence, right? And that's the only thing that's emphasized, but yet their joy, their hope is not talked about. So if you look at page 3, the one portion of the guide right here that's colorful, these are these messages that they want to give to the community. And if you read them, they're full of hope. And that's what they wanted to convey to everybody, right? That despite all their experiences, they have a lot of hope about their future and what they bring and want to give to the community. So that's kind of all I want to say about that.
Thank you so much. I want to invite Lacey to come back and join the panel. And Nancy, get us, or you want to stay where you are? This is the question and answer period. So if you're wondering, and I just wanted the panelists to have an opportunity to address any questions that you may have, or just listen to your comments, because this has been an extremely powerful panel. It has had stories and shared many different aspects of what Lacey pointed out is the humanidad that is happening. And so it has given a face to and stories to this narrative that's what's happening, as well as has given color and hope and a positive direction. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand, so that or if you want to make a comment.
I actually want to make a comment. I mentioned, right, I'm in this privileged position. I've been involved with the Human Rights Alliance. I was one of the professors teaching the community scholars class that this project came out of. And so I see it all happening, and I want to emphasize that this moment in history, as particular as it is connected to a longer story. And we've been here, and we've never had a chance to heal from being made invisible, being criminalized, all of these things. And so in some ways it's been fascinating to see that those of us coming to the table to figure out how we make this moment better than the one we lived has allowed us to heal and to have these conversations that we didn't have a space for before. And I think that's really important, because it helps to connect everything, and it helps us to build community as well.
Questions, comments? In the back, you want to stand up?
Yes, hi. My name is Adeline Zimmerman. I had a question sort of for the entire panel. Several of you mentioned the importance of getting the word out, right? I think Professor Abrego, Nancy, and some of the people working with the youth talked about this. The Dreamer movement has really gotten a lot of attention for their incredible media strategies, right? Like digital media strategies and activism. And I wonder from the organizers, particularly working with the Human Rights Alliance, but you can all answer this question, is, what are some of the opportunities and limitations of social media, digital media campaigns? And obviously I'm very biased and selfish in asking the question because I work on this issue, but are there ways in which I could contribute in that? And but I realize that there are both opportunities and limitations around that, you know? So I really wanted to get a little bit more about that, about some of those organizing strategies. Thank you.
Nice to see you. Yeah, thank you for that question. It's really important. Also, one thing that I forgot is that I heard other folks saying, and I do want to re-emphasize it, right, that things are still happening, right? That when we talk about family detention, also, it's not like something that was over a year ago or a few months ago with the Flores settlement. This is still happening, and one thing, and I'm glad that Adelie brings that up, because we still do need to continue to pressure on different levels and hold this government accountable for what it is doing, this long history, right, of violence against our communities. One thing that I did want to mention, and I'm going to tie it into Adelie's question, is about the moms that have been released. Some of them are being very harassed still by ICE. They're getting visited at their home without being told. Some of them even have ankle bracelets, right? So they are living still with the fear, right? Even though they're released, right? They're still living with that same trauma, that same fear that they could possibly lose their cases and then be deported. So they're in a situation that's very fragile in that sense, right? But they are also still organized outside, and it's important for us to know how to support them as well. One of the things that we've been highlighting and trying to use social media also to our advantage is tweeting, reposting some of the letters that these mothers wrote while they were in detention. Also, they've been writing letters as a group of organized women that were in detention. Also, after being released, they are still organizing across the U.S. because a lot of them have gone back to where their families are at, but they're in communication. And so what we want to do is continue getting their demands out. And one of the things that we have been emphasizing, right, is that it's not just about ending family detention, right? It's about their complete freedom. And that's what they have said. And that's what we want to uplift, right? It's not just about not being in or making more humane the way detention. No, there is no way to humanely detain a woman and a child or a father. There's just no way to do it. And so we're not asking for reform of that. And we want to be very explicit of that. So when we ask folks to tweet, when we ask folks to write opinions for op-eds, if you have a space, right, where you can actually influence, whether that be in writing, whether that be through social media, please listen to what the families are actually asking for. They're not asking for reform. They're asking for freedom. And there's no way that you can be released and have an ankle bracelet. There's no way that you can be released and you're still tied to certain court cases that have other things tied to it. This is not freedom, right? And so what the families are demanding is complete freedom, right? The ability for them to be able to, as Alex and other folks were mentioning, right, to be able to, they came seeking refuge. They are still seeking refuge, right? And so we want to uplift their demands, right? And even if we have a complete analysis, right, of the situation of foreign policy, at the end we want the demand to be that the families are asking for. So I would say, if you, as academics, right, listen to also what the families are asking for. Listen to the experiences of these women and their children and young people, right, that are actually going through these things. What are their families saying? That's a whole nother side of it that often isn't talked about. Families that we've gotten to work with really closely and heard what it's like for them to deal with their families, either in detention or going through this unjust system, right? So please help uplift those voices. A website I would recommend where a lot of the letters have been placed is endfamilydetention.com. A sister and organizer helps run that website, and we trust her a lot because she's been in communication closely with the families and organizers. So I there's a lot of great pieces that have been written also by Dr. Abrego, by Dr. Gonzalez, and a lot of other folks too. Of course, don't only go to what scholars say. I always say that, those of us that have had the privilege to go to school in whatever conditions, it has a different impact when we're connected to the issues, when scholars are actually there at the table with families, right? When they're connected, when they're organizing as well. So, use the different spaces that you can, but definitely go back to what the families are demanding.
Thank you. Did you have a comment?
Well, I was going to.
I was going to add something else. Another way that, at least at the UCLA Labor Center, we've been able to get these stories out is through our publications as well. So the UCLA Labor Center just published a new book on the issue of deportations, and it talks about not just documenting stories of deportations, but also stories of resistance. So the book is called Dreams Deported. You can talk to me about getting a copy, or you can order it from our website. And another way that you can use this book also is as an organizing tool. So if you know any community organizations that would like to use a book to start the conversation, not really to use the book as a way to talk about the issue, but a way to start the conversation. You can use the book as a fundraising tool by keeping the profit that you make from the book as well. So, and this is done through the classes that the UCLA Labor Center teaches here, where students are really able to document, the issues that are happening, and the students that are involved, the people that are involved in the ground, documenting their stories.
Alex, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, one of the things that we're doing is bringing a program to them, a curriculum called the Joven Noble, which is culturally connected with them, because it's all about teachings through storytelling, like our ancestors used to teach us and educate us. And they get that. We do it in the circle setting, and the first thing that we do is what we call cargas y regalos, which is letting go of all that weight you carry, but you always got to give a gift back. You throw that weight on us in the center and let our ancestors take it away, right? They feel good doing that. They feel connected in this group setting. They finish that. That's a 10-week program. But one of the things that we know and we felt that we needed to do was to not let them go. A curriculum comes, it starts, and has an ending date. What happens afterwards? So what we've done is that we've done the 10-week curriculum, and then we come once a month with that group for the rest of the year. And if we come back the next year, we continue with that same group. And every other group that's getting the new services are going to be coming, once that ends, are going to be joining that other group. What's the next step that we're doing is that once this kid graduates, there are círculos in our communities. We want to create our círculo de hombres, de mujeres, for this group of youngsters. So when they graduate from high school, they know that they could go to another círculo in our community, that they could go in and feel protected, right? So those are one of the things that we're doing. The other piece is that once they graduate from the program, they're eligible for our summer youth leadership program that we do. So that's when they learn about civic engagement, community organizing. They understand, we teach them about political process. We take them to visits in City Hall, their representatives. So that wakes them up on, on the fact that they have a voice, right? For them to be able to see people that only see on TV, all of a sudden talking to them has been empowering for them. Right, so that's how you start, having this youth feel that empowered, feel that they are somebody, that they have a voice. And then you could talk to them about, what are some of the issues in the community that they could get involved in. This conference wasn't our idea. This conference was their ideas. We were talking about doing things, and they said, well, why don't we put a concert together? I said, well, that costs a lot of money, but, if we could put some educational things, we might fundraise for it, right? So that's how we started getting involved. And, the youth leadership program, usually what it does is that the youth that go through it end up doing a community event on Know Your Rights. They do the presentations and they do the outreach to get community to come in and have free legal consultations with attorneys. This time around, those that graduated, from those that were part of the leadership program, were the main organizers. So you're gonna see the youth being called facilitators in the workshops, you know, and that's where you create leaders. You know, like Jose, Osmin, and Romeo are three of my top ones, you know, that they're doing interviews. Romeo right now you're gonna see him today at 6 and in Univision, in the news, talking about, you know, how he's being helped. You know, you saw Jose in the newspaper 2 days ago. You know, you saw them, all three of them, with El Piolín and El Grupo Maná. You know, I mean, they're become celebrities of the school now. You know, they feel so empowered and nobody's bullying them anymore. That everybody's going up to them and talking to them and connecting. How did you do it? And they have become our outreach workers already. They are telling us, you know what, Alex? Why don't we have a group of the girls? Because they know that the girls are different in regards of how they're reacting. These kids are reacting more, you know, with attitudes, but the young girls are going under the radar. They're going under the radar. And they have the same levels of trauma, but they're going under the radar. So we need to start developing, and that's in the works, that we need to start developing a similar program for the young ladies that's specific to their issues, right? So those are the things. That's how you create, you know, this, bringing this consciousness that they don't take what they've suffered and keep suffering, carrying that weight, but to let it out and be able to speak on it. Because once they speak on it, letting it out and speaking about it, it's part of the healing process.
Thank you. I think we got just one more comment, you know. No?
I just want to
One
say
minute.
you
Yeah, you go ahead briefly, and then Roberto wrap it up.
okay. You answered the question I wanted to know, but I'll just say thank you for humanizing the stories that need to be told, and for making us so much more aware and so much more educated, that we will be able to, as individuals, share these stories that you have told us and hopefully empower others. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Roberto?
Yeah, thank you. This is a fabulous panel. I learned a lot and was moved, almost to tears. Agradecerle su presencia y su valentía en venir a compartir su historia, que no es nada fácil, me imagino.
Ok, aunque cometí muchos errores porque dejé muchas cosas que se me fueron por alto. Por ejemplo, lo que Nancy dijo de las cartas. O sea, porque hace poco he salido del centro de detención, o sea que mi mente aún no está pues claramente como tiene que estar, porque vivir esa situación en esos lugares no es fácil.
Usted está bien clarita. It's not for the panel. We don't have enough time. I would love to ask you why all you Central Americans hate America, but we don't have time right now.
We love the United States. I just hated that they call it America, because the whole continent is America.
All right, so
No, that's the
I
only thing.
know what's behind you all, but my question seriously is, you know, I look at the news articles, I'm happy to see this getting generated, but my experiential radar tells me we're on the precipice of watching what happened to the Dreamer movement happen to our youth. What I mean by what happened to the Dreamer was the political commodification. Basically, you had Dreamers suddenly be this political commodity that politicians, instead of fighting them, started trouncing around, to the point where you have Lorena Praeli. And you can hear this, Lorena, I hope you're watching this on stream, is now a primary Latino spokesperson, a former Dreamer, for Hillary Clinton. So I can foresee where you're going to see former incarcerated youth, maybe their moms, be similarly used actually to support policies that are against. So my question for you is, how do we keep the edge in the absence of like an ideological structure, like during the war, there was something called an ideology that kept people focused on a real goal, a real objective, a real enemigo. How do you do that now in the absence of these kinds of, you know?
On that note, Roberto, I am being asked and nudged that that question needs to be answered during the break. Please, give this panel a strong thank you.
Can we continue?
Break.
now?
They want to answer. Let them speak.